Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Beyond Fulfillment podcast. I'm your host, Dave Goulas, and this week, my guest is the founder and CEO of Silicon Valley Innovations, Dr. Gail Lebovic. Welcome, Gail.
Thank you, Dave. It's nice to meet you, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here. Um, if you could, I have your bio here, and it's about a mile long with a lot of accolades and accomplishments and incredible things. But if you could, for everyone, can you just give us some background on your story and like who you are and what you do?
Sure. How much time do you have? In recent history, I did my surgical training at Stanford, which I just loved. I as an undergrad studied physiology and anatomy, and I really loved the human body and was mystified by how intricate it was. And so I went on to go into surgery, which was great. But during that process, I realized that the treatment of breast cancer could really use some help. And so I wound up focusing on women's healthcare and specifically breast cancer surgery, breast reconstruction. And I did a lot of work in the clinical domain on trying to change things, make it a nicer, kinder, softer experience for women. So that was extremely rewarding. And at Stanford, as you know, there's quite a lot of innovation that goes on in the Valley. And I was very fortunate to meet Dr. Tom Fogarty, who ran an incubator, essentially an incubator for med tech. And that was back in the 90s. And so through that experience, I started working with one of his lead engineers, George Herman. And he and I began developing products, most of them in women's healthcare, not all of them in breast. But it was extremely exciting, productive, challenging, crazy. And being the adrenaline junkie that I am, it was just a great experience. So here we are, 8 companies later.
Yeah, 8 companies and several successful exits later. So you mentioned being an adrenaline junkie. Have you always had that entrepreneurial drive to like see a problem and come up with a solution and find a way to turn it into a product or a company?
I think so. I just don't know how it started. When I was younger, I was a gymnast. And, I think that really had a lot of influence on me. It was kind of like failure is not an option. If you miss, the uneven parallel bar, you're going to fall off. So it really taught me discipline and perseverance and tenacity and all the things that have come in extremely handy throughout my career and in life in general. So I think that had a lot to do with it, just keeping your head down and keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the probably the most famous exit or company you had is a company called Focal Therapeutics that you co-founded. I know it was acquired in 2018. When was that co-founded?
Uh, 2000, I'm going to say 2000, probably 2010.
Okay.
Or a
Now,
little.
okay, so about 8 years. And just for context for I mean, you sold that to Hologic and it was acquired for $125 million, what the press release says. So that's something a lot of entrepreneurs dream of in terms of creating a company, building it, and having a successful exit. Like when you started the company, did you like build with the intent to sell?
Well, we kind of have a model where we do that. So through the years, what we've done is identify a clinical need. It's a little bit of a recipe, right? First, we identify a clinical need and we go, that's interesting. Maybe we could design a product that could help solve that problem. And then we go to work and we research the market size, the regulatory pathway, the intellectual property, And we can spend anywhere from a year to 2 years, just researching whether or not we think it's a good opportunity and whether we can come up with a good solution that would be easily adopted, that would be practical to manufacture, that would have good margins. So we try to do as much as we can on the front end before actually starting a company and doing the work. So we stay pretty focused on picking the right groove. You know what I mean? And instead of the endpoint, we don't really look to the endpoint. I think if you put the building blocks in place in a proper fashion and you build a strong foundation, the money will follow. We don't go, hey, let's go out and get a big exit. It doesn't really work like that. It really takes putting the building blocks in place, understanding the landscape, understanding how you're going to market this thing, and then being flexible along the journey, because you're going to learn things that are going to make you change your direction. So you have to be flexible. I think a lot of times entrepreneurs develop a product and they're stuck on it, right? And they keep trying to push that round peg in a square hole, and it just, it's not going. So you have to read the landscape. You have to be willing to be flexible. And then ultimately, a lot of times people will ask, how long is it going to take? Investors, for example, they'll say, okay, I'm putting my money up. How long is it going to take you? You don't know, right? You don't know, because again, there are a lot of unknowns in the startup environment. And for one thing, the economy can change, and the economy can impact when that exit happens. So all you can do is wake up every day and build value in that company. That's kind of what we do.
And do you have like a team you work with on all these companies that are like your core group where you've been in several businesses with?
Yeah, the core really is myself, and as I mentioned before, George Herman has been in most of these companies alongside of me. He comes from an engineering background, but also we share kind of a strong regulatory background, and intellectual property is probably one of our favorite things to do, to create intellectual property. I can't count the number of times he has told me, I'll come up with a design feature or something, and he'll go, well, it defies the laws of physics, so we can't really do that. But he's also very skilled in understanding manufacturing and the manufacturing processes. That is so important because it leads straight into cost of a device or a product. So it's truly a bit magical, that recipe of a clinician working with an engineer directly. And I know he had that opportunity to do that with Dr. Fogarty as well. And it's very unique.
And you mentioned your love for intellectual property. I see here as well. You hold over 50 patents. Is that right?
I guess. I don't know. I don't count those either. But one thing that I did hear along the way, that less than 7% of United States patents are issued to women, which I never thought of that. That was kind of interesting. But yeah, it is an interesting process to think of things that are completely novel, that are worthy of getting a patent. And so that is a really creative piece.
Attention manufacturers and e-commerce sellers. Is fulfillment a headache for you? Whether you're fulfilling in-house and you need to outsource, or you're with another 3PL, you deserve better service. Easy DC 3PL can help. We offer personal service, fast response time, and we're flexible to meet your unique needs. Get in touch today and find out how we can help you. And like you said, for many of these companies, there's a lot of time on the front end spent researching and planning and ensuring it's a good idea before you even form the company or really put things into gear. I mean, how difficult is that part? Because that's something that maybe is not common to many entrepreneurs, where maybe many others are just impulsive and they go right into it and just do it and don't have that type of um, patience, let's say, to really stick with the research and make sure that it's a good idea prior. Like what's that process been like?
I think it's really critical. I think it's the essential thing that has led to our serial successes, because you learn the landmines, you learn the strategy of how you're going to approach this problem. It's a lot like bungee jumping. You know, it's like you can go up on the bridge and you can kind of scope out what's below you, but you want to have the bungee cord attached so that when you jump off, you know, you may bounce a couple of times, but you're not going to hit the concrete. Um, it's kind of, I like to say I'm risk averse because I really am risk averse. And when you're doing a startup, it's a high risk environment. So what can we do to kind of limit the risk? And the only way you can do that is research, and really putting the hard work in on the front end.
Do you have some examples on like some of these past successes where maybe in the middle of it you had to pivot and go in a totally different direction than you planned that ultimately led you to success?
Um, I would say yes. Nasoclenz, the current product that we're doing, I think is a great example. So we had several designs for the applicator. I don't know if you're familiar with our applicators. Are you familiar with the applicator?
You know, I saw it online, so I have not used the product, but
So it's fairly unique, and this is the applicator in its simplest form. So remember, we talked about intellectual property. And when we decided to address the nasal area, it has unique anatomic features. And so what we want to do is create a product where we can leverage the product shape and design to actually solve the problems that we're trying to do in an anatomic space. So this is a very unique applicator, anatomically designed. It's soft, it's flexible. This is a medical grade elastomer. And to create this, the engineering behind it, even though it looks really simple, the engineering is pretty phenomenal. And when we were just developing the product, we didn't know if it was going to be viable. So we created a single mold because it's injection molded. And we also had a plan B, because in surgery, for example, you always have to have a plan B because you're going to run into unexpected things. So we didn't know if this would come out of the mold or not because of the spiral. So we had a different design that was a different shape and it was straight. Not optimal for what we were trying to accomplish in the nose, but perhaps better on the manufacturing side. And we ran them both, and lo and behold, they both came out of the mold just perfect. So we went with the optimal design for the problem solving, but at the same time had tested the manufacturing processes. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah. So you mentioned having a plan B, and then you mentioned surgery. So being a surgeon for so many years, and I mean, talk about a high risk environment where you know mistakes can't be made. Like you said, you have to think ahead. If this doesn't work, then I have a plan B. I mean, how important do you think that's been to your business success?
You know, I think that's a really great question. And it brings out something so important because there's so many parallels. When I went to the operating room, let's say to do a breast cancer operation and then a reconstruction, you have to make sure you have everything that you need before you ever get to the operating room. You need to have all the tests, the diagnosis, you need to know where you're going, all the diagnostic x-rays, mammograms, perhaps an MRI, the implants that you might need for reconstruction. So a lot goes into it so that when you're at the scrub sink, scrubbing your hands, you know, you're not saying to yourself, oh my God, the implants are in the trunk of my car, or, you know, God knows what. So I think there's, again, a lot to the preparation, the building blocks, building a strong foundation, being prepared, and then there's the execution. And it makes the execution so much more streamlined. Did we run into issues in surgery? Yes, all the time, all the time. And so you have to have the knowledge and expertise to, again, be flexible, perhaps change direction, and have a plan B. And you like to think of those things ahead of time. Now, sometimes you need plan C. And, you know, you have to be able to think on your feet as well. And I think the same is true in business, where you're going to head into headwinds sometimes. And again, you just have to kind of stay cool and learn from experience, learn from other people's experience, understand your limitations, and fill those gaps with people who may have experience in a different area. For example, quality. You know, you want to make sure that your products are of the highest quality. So you need somebody who's got really good long-term quality experience to work with the manufacturing team and everyone else.
Okay. And with your current product, Nasoclenz, can you tell us a bit more about the company and kind of where it's headed?
Yeah, it's certainly different for our team because, as I said, we spent most of our time in women's health and mostly breast and breast surgery. So this was really different. And what happened was, it was an idea that I had thought about for years, because I understood that in surgery, the nose can be one of our enemies, actually, because the nose is pretty dirty and we are all contaminated with bacteria, viruses, you know, particles in our nose, just like our mouth, in fact. And if you think of it like brushing your teeth, we know how much oral health has helped our general health, right? And this platform starts in a place where we're creating something that's just like a toothbrush for your nose. So it's meant to cleanse and moisturize the anterior, the front part of the nose here, which is nice and soft, but is the gateway to our sinuses and our lungs. So every day we're breathing in junk, polluted air, viruses, pollen, particles, and we have to clean it. We have to clean our noses if we're going to remain healthy. So that's kind of how it started. And as usual, it starts with the fun part, which is designing the device. That's always fun. But this is just the beginning. This is essentially a drug delivery system. Even though it looks very simple, we have product line extensions that embody a drug delivery system. So we can deliver medications in the nose, which is a very effective way to deliver medicines. It's very rapid absorption. And I think it's been overlooked and underestimated. So it's a huge market, and we're pretty excited about what's happening here.
Okay. And the company was founded just a couple years ago?
Yeah, at the end of 2020.
Okay. Okay.
How it goes. I mean, we needed something to do during lockdown.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. And then I saw on the site too, is it mainly in like retail right now and some e-commerce? Is that the model?
You know, I love the fact that you brought that up. So what we do typically with our products is we go out and we do what we call a limited release. So we test different ways of releasing the product. And we tested it in the clinical domain. We tested it in retail, in independent pharmacies, and online, which was new for us, right? This is a product we can actually sell online to consumers and patients. And of those three things, the clinical environment was very receptive to the product. They really, really like the product and value what we're trying to accomplish. So that was great. We had great warm welcome from allergists, ENT doctors, wellness doctors, concierge doctors, surgeons. And then the online platform has been amazing. So we're growing at over 30% month over month without any marketing yet, just as a test. And we can actually sell a product on Amazon, which is just a whole new animal for us. So yeah, that's what we've done. And we're preparing now, we're actually raising capital for the next growth phase of the company.
So after like such a illustrious career and your medical background and all these successful companies, like what's been the most rewarding part of your journey?
Wow. Well, I love it all. And it's intertwined with a lot of things. But I think doing surgery, there's nothing like doing surgery. There's just nothing like that. Being able to reconstruct the breast is by far the most amazing experience. It taps into creativity, skill, knowledge. It taps into every part of your brain, both the right and the left side. So I love that. And what I ultimately did was I created a nonprofit organization to teach surgeons unique ways and different ways of thinking so that they can be more creative in surgery, particularly breast surgery. And so I feel very fortunate that I was able to do that. And we've had that nonprofit for 17 years. We've been teaching courses. We just finished a course in Newport Beach, and it's international. We've now got a digital platform, and it's extremely rewarding. But the med tech stuff also is rewarding in a different way, because surgery, you touch people one-on-one, you impact their life forever, and it's a great feeling. But when you develop a product that touches 100 million women, it's a whole different, it just opens up a whole different universe. And so I feel very fortunate to have been able to do both in my short lifetime.
And you brought up the creativity part of it, and I've interviewed a lot of people now, and I've found too that the people that are just the most happy and the most successful, A, love what they do, but two, they're very creative and they're always thinking of ways that they can do it better. You've certainly, it's your career has embodied that. Do you have any advice to people that are starting out, and particularly to younger people that are getting their figuring out what they want to do in terms of how to best find their right career and path in life?
I think you embodied it in that last little sentence that you said. It's like, follow your passion, something that you really love to do, because then it never feels like work. It doesn't feel like, oh, I've got to get up and I've got to, go to work. It doesn't feel like that. You just want to do it all the time because you love it. So you've got to follow your passion, understand your limitations, work with people as a team, all aligned, rowing in the same direction in the boat. And don't forget the bungee cord.
Yeah, and listen, I'm glad you brought up it several times, understanding your limitations too. And that's something I've certainly learned in my journey as a startup founder is, and I tend to be one that wants to take on a lot of different things, and I'm, learning my limitations and relying on team members so much more. But how would you, for entrepreneurs too, so many, especially if they're startups, they're bootstrapping, right? Any advice on finding the right partners or the right team members to be on that journey with them?
You know, sometimes if you just kind of live your life in an open fashion, you're going to meet a lot of people along the journey. I think that passion for learning that you just mentioned, is really important, because you'll get into conversations with people who you don't know, perhaps on an airplane or who knows where, at a Starbucks. Um, and it'll open doors, but you need to learn over time how to kind of filter people who will be good team members and collaborators, and those who won't. And it's not always a straight line. you know you will have good experiences, bad experiences, but the bad experiences help you appreciate the good ones. And I think you just have to live your life in that open fashion, and then learn how to kind of process and filter through that.
Excellent advice. All right, so we're just wrapping up first quarter of Q1 of 2024 at the time of this recording. What are you most excited about for the rest of this year?
Wow. Um, I'm just really excited about our company right now. We're in a growth phase. We know that we've developed something from nothing that addresses a really significant problem. We have more products to come. And so we're excited about finding a partner who understands what we're trying to do. And I think we have a pretty big, lofty goal of trying to help people live healthier lives. I never understood how many people had nasal issues, allergy issues, sinus problems, but I've since learned there's at least 155 million people in the United States who use nasal relief products, which just blew my mind. So I'm excited about trying to have some type of a clinical impact and help people in this domain. And then we have a feminine healthcare product coming on the heels of it. So there's lots more to come. And I guess we'll have another podcast at the end of the
Excellent.
year.
Excellent. Okay. And if people want to get in touch with you and learn more about your company or what you do, what's the best way people can reach out to you?
LinkedIn is a great way. So I'm now on LinkedIn. Or they can email at joy@svi-inc.com.
All right. And we'll link that in the show notes for everyone as well.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
All right. Well, Dr. Gail, thanks so much for taking the time and being on the show today. And
And
that is,
thanks for having me.
and that's all the time we have for now. We will see you next time.